I've been married to Sarah for nearly 10 years, and for the most part I thought we had a solid relationship. We had our ups and downs like every couple, but I genuinely believed we were in a good place. We have a 7-year-old son, Ethan, who is the light of our lives. But recently, I've felt a shift, something I couldn't quite put my finger on, like the ground beneath my feet had begun to tremble. It all started a couple of months ago when Sarah began working late more often. First, I didn't think much of it. She's ambitious and has been eyeing a promotion at her job. But then it escalated. She started coming home later saying she had team meetings or client dinners. I tried to be supportive, but the excuses felt rehearsed and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. One evening, as we sat on the sofa watching TV, Ethan asked a question that caught me completely off guard. "Dad, who's Uncle James?" He asked innocently, his big eyes staring up at me. I froze. I looked over at Sarah, who suddenly looked like a deer caught in headlights. "We didn't have an Uncle James. Ethan, we don't have an Uncle James," I stammered, my heart racing. Sarah hurriedly tried to brush it off, saying it was probably a friend from school or something he heard. But the way her voice quivered, the way her eyes darted, made me realize she was hiding something. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept going over the question in my mind and what it could mean. I started to think about all the little signs I had ignored. The secretive phone calls in the other room, the way she kept her phone face down, and the new perfume she wore that wasn't anything I recognized. It felt like pieces of a puzzle that I had been too blind to see. A week later, I stumbled upon a text message on her phone. I shouldn't have been snooping, but I felt an urge to know. I saw a message from a contact labeled Jim, and it was full of flirty emojis and inside jokes I didn't understand. My heart sank as I read it, and I felt nausea wash over me. This wasn't just harmless flirting, it was an outright betrayal. I confronted her that night. I waited until Ethan was in bed, my heart pounding in my chest. "Sarah, can we talk?" I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She looked up from her phone with a frown, her expression shifting from annoyance to fear as she saw my serious demeanor. "What now?" she asked, irritation dripping from her tone. "Who is Jim?" I asked bluntly. Her face paled, and for a moment I thought she might deny it. "It's just a coworker," she said, but I could hear the tremor in her voice. "We're working on a project together, nothing more." I pressed further, showing her the messages. The look on her face morphed from denial to panic, and she started to make excuses, saying I was overreacting and that it was nothing but harmless fun. But I knew better. I felt anger bubbling up. "This isn't just fun, Sarah. This is cheating." I shouted, my voice rising. She started crying, claiming I was being unreasonable. "You're just being insecure," she begged, latching onto that as an escape route from the truth. I felt like I was talking to a wall. No matter how clear I made my feelings, she twisted the narrative to make me the villain. That night I went to bed feeling like I had lost my mind. I was crushed, angry, and heartbroken all at once. I felt like the world had been ripped out from under me. I thought about Ethan and how he would take this news if things fell apart. My mind swirled with questions, fears, and a deep-seated need for revenge. This wasn't how I envisioned my life. I didn't want my son to grow up in a broken home. But I also could not ignore the pain of betrayal. I began to formulate a plan. It wasn't just about revenge. I needed to take control of my life again. I wanted to know everything. I wanted the truth, and I wanted to expose her lies. I knew I had to dig deeper, and the thought of what I would find was like a dark cloud looming over me. I steeled myself for what I had to do next. For the next couple of weeks, I became a man on a mission. I turned into a shadow of the husband Sarah once knew. I went to work, came home, and kept my interactions with her polite but distant. I felt like I was walking a thin line, trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy for Ethan's sake while brewing a storm under the surface. Every time Sarah left for work, I found myself counting the minutes until she returned, mentally preparing for whatever I might uncover next. The more I observed her, the more red flags emerged. She started dressing differently, more provocatively if I'm being honest. The low-cut blouses and tighter jeans she began to wear were not just for work, they were definitely for someone else. I was itching to catch her, to get proof of this affair, to confront her with undeniable evidence. I started to look up ways to investigate without raising suspicion. There were articles about how to catch a cheating spouse, and I devoured them like a man starved for answers. One afternoon, I decided to follow her after she left for work. I felt like a detective in a movie, heart racing with anxiety and anticipation. I waited until she drove away and slipped into my own car, maintaining a safe distance. The traffic was light, and I was surprised at how easily I could keep up with her. She drove to a coffee shop across town, a place I had never seen her visit before. I parked down the street, trying to appear nonchalant, but I could feel the adrenaline coursing through my veins. As I watched her get out of the car and walk in, my heart sank deeper into my stomach. She was smiling, chatting with someone who looked like a typical office guy: jeans, a button-up shirt, and that casual confidence that made my blood boil. They stood close together, laughing and leaning in as if they were sharing secrets. I squinted, desperate to catch every detail. I felt like I was about to explode, rage bubbling just beneath the surface. They shared a table, and while I waited, my phone buzzed with a message from a friend. I barely read it, my attention glued to the scene before me. I watched as they sipped their drinks, her flirtations clearly evident. I almost couldn't breathe. I was on the verge of going in there and confronting them, but I knew I had to stay calm and collected. I needed to get proof, not act on impulse. After about an hour, Sarah stood up to leave, and I followed at a safe distance. They walked towards her car, and my heart sank when I saw him leaning closer to whisper something in her ear. She laughed, a genuine laugh that pricked at my heart. I wanted to scream and tear her away from him, but I restrained myself. I noted the way her eyes sparkled, something I hadn't seen in ages. When she got into her car and drove off, I made my way back home, my mind racing. I felt betrayed, angry, and utterly heartbroken. I wanted to confront her with what I had seen, but I knew I needed more evidence to make my case unassailable. I had to gather everything I could before making my move. The following day, I was determined to secure more proof. I went through our shared computer and found her email account still logged in. My hands shook as I opened it, scanning through her messages. I found emails to Jim that were flirtatious and suggestive, filled with language that made my stomach churn. The final nail in the coffin was an email that mentioned a weekend trip they had planned together under the guise of work. I felt like I had been hit by a freight train. The world blurred around me, and I fought back tears of rage and sorrow. Weekend trip. With him, I had been a fool, too caught up in my life to see the truth. It was all so clear now. Later that night, I confronted her again, ready with the evidence I had gathered. "Sarah, we need to talk," I said, my voice a low growl. I laid out the emails, the messages I had seen. There was no running from this now. Her face dropped, the color draining from her cheeks as she realized the gig was up. "It's not what it looks like," she protested, but her voice was shaky and I could see the panic in her eyes. "Jim and I were just working closely. You're being paranoid." I slammed the laptop shut, cutting her off. "You think I'm paranoid? I've seen you with him. I followed you. I know everything." The shock that echoed in her eyes only fueled my fury. I was done with her lies, done with her attempts to make me feel like the crazy one. Every excuse she tried to throw at me felt like salt in an open wound. I was filled with a mix of anger and pain, but I was resolute in my decision. This was not going to end with her lying her way out of it. I wanted the truth. I wanted closure. As I stood there, the weight of betrayal heavy on my shoulders, I realized I was no longer the passive husband who turned a blind eye. I was ready to take steps forward, whatever those might entail. After that confrontation, things in our house turned cold. The air was thick with tension, and I could feel the weight of Sarah's guilt hanging over us like an unwelcome guest. We were both pretending to keep it together for Ethan, but the facade was crumbling fast. It felt like we were living in two separate worlds, mine, filled with anger and betrayal, and hers, hopefully still filled with denial. I didn't want to talk to her, not after everything that had happened. I avoided her as much as I could during the day, focusing on work and spending time with Ethan. I needed to think, to process everything that had happened. I felt like a volcano ready to erupt, and I didn't want to take my frustrations out on our son. But I could see the worry in Ethan's eyes. He could sense that something was wrong. It broke my heart. One night after Ethan had gone to bed, I finally confronted Sarah again. It was time to lay everything out on the table. "We need to talk about what's going on," I said, my voice steady but low, trying to keep my emotions in check. I could see her flinch at my tone, her eyes darting away from mine as if she was searching for a way out. "What's there to talk about?" she replied defensively, crossing her arms. "You've already made up your mind." "No, I haven't," I insisted, taking a step closer. "I want to hear you say it. I want to hear you admit what you've done." I was done with her rationalizations and half-truths. I wanted her to face the reality of her actions. She hesitated, biting her lip as if weighing her next words. "Okay, yes, I've been seeing Jim, but it's not what you think. I never wanted to hurt you." Those words stung like a slap to the face. I had been waiting for the truth, and here it was, laid bare before me. "Not what I think. You're having an affair, Sarah," I exclaimed, anger bubbling to the surface. "You've been lying to me, and you think I'll just accept some half-assed explanation. It was just a fling. It didn't mean anything." She spat back, her voice rising defensively. "You don't understand the pressure I was under. We were just having fun, and you've been so distant lately." Distant? I felt a surge of disbelief. I had been working hard to support our family while she was out playing house with some other guy. "You think this is my fault? You're the one who chose to betray me." My heart raced, the intensity of the moment tangible. "What about our marriage? What about Ethan?" As the anger subsided, a deep sadness settled in its place. I realized that her affair was a symptom of a deeper issue. She felt neglected, but I had no idea things had gotten so bad for her. I wanted to understand, to reach her, but the betrayal was so deep that forgiveness felt impossible right then. The conversation shifted, and for the first time we began to explore the cracks in our relationship. She talked about feeling alone, her frustrations with work, and how she had craved attention and validation. I listened, but it felt like an excuse for her behavior. I had also felt distant, buried in work and responsibilities, but I never once considered stepping outside our marriage. "I should have talked to you," she admitted, tears streaming down her face. "But it felt easier to just escape." "You call this escapism?" I shot back, my voice breaking. "You think cheating will solve anything? It's only made it worse." I felt like I was caught in a whirlwind of emotions, teetering between wanting to understand her pain and wanting to throw her out of our lives. That night, I went to bed feeling more confused than ever. We had only scratched the surface of our problems, but the betrayal hung heavy in the air. I knew that I needed to make a decision about our future, but the thought of tearing apart our family felt unbearable. I loved Ethan and I wanted to give him a stable home, but at what cost? As I lay there, I thought about my next steps. I realized that I could not just forgive and forget. I had to regain control of my life and my emotions. I needed to gather my thoughts, not just for the sake of my marriage, but for my own peace of mind. I started jotting down everything I felt, my pain, anger, confusion, and fears about the future. I also began to consider my options. Was it possible to rebuild our marriage? Could we find a way back to each other? Or was it time to cut my losses and walk away? As I wrestled with my thoughts, I knew one thing for sure. I wouldn't allow myself to be a victim of her choices. I was done being passive. Whatever path I chose needed to be one of empowerment, not one of helplessness. As days turned into weeks, I continued to watch Sarah closely. I wanted to see if she would take any genuine steps towards making amends. I needed to know if she was truly committed to working through her mistakes or if she was just trying to save face. I needed clarity, and I was determined to find it. As the weeks dragged on, the weight of the situation hung over us like a thick fog. Sarah and I went through the motions of being a family, but the connection we once had felt frayed and fragile. Every interaction was laced with tension, each conversation a tightrope walk between civility and confrontation. I watched her, waiting for signs of sincerity, any indications that she was genuinely remorseful and willing to change. Ethan remained blissfully unaware of the turmoil. He still saw us as a united front, and I was determined to keep it that way for his sake. I made an effort to spend more time with him, throwing myself into his world of dinosaurs and superheroes. But even as I played along, I couldn't shake the gnawing feeling that my marriage was slipping through my fingers. One evening, as I was tucking Ethan into bed, he asked me a question that struck me hard. "Dad, are you and Mom okay? You seem sad." It pierced my heart. I forced a smile, reassuring him that everything was fine, but deep down I felt like I was lying to my own child. I knew I had to make a choice soon, either to fight for my family or to let it go. In the days that followed, Sarah seemed more attentive, perhaps sensing the urgency of our situation. She reached out more, asking if we could go out on family outings or have date nights, but my instincts screamed at me. I couldn't just forget what she had done. It was like trying to erase a tattoo. The scars would always be there. One night after I had put Ethan to bed, I took a deep breath and decided to confront her again. "Sarah, I need to know where your head is at. Are you truly sorry for what happened? Do you want to fix this?" I felt vulnerable, exposing my emotional wounds. She looked at me, tears welling in her eyes. "I do want to fix this, I swear. I've realized how much I've hurt you, and I'm so sorry. I was lost, but I'm ready to do whatever it takes to make it right." "Then prove it," I said, my voice firm. "I need to see real change. No more secrets, no more lies. We need to be open with each other, and you need to cut contact with Jim completely." She nodded, though I could see the fear in her eyes. "I will, I promise. I'll do everything to make it work." Yet doubt still gnawed at me. Was this just another act? In the days that followed, Sarah took steps to reassure me. She deleted Jim's contact information, blocked him on social media, and even offered to go to couples therapy. I was hesitant, but I realized that if we were going to try to salvage our marriage, I needed to be open to the process too. As we started therapy, I felt a mix of hope and skepticism. I wanted to believe in the possibility of healing, but the road ahead felt riddled with potholes. During our sessions, we explored the reasons behind her choices and the dynamics of our relationship. It was emotionally draining, but I began to see glimpses of the woman I had fallen in love with, the one who had dreams and aspirations, who laughed easily and shared her life with me. But even amongst the breakthroughs, I struggled with anger. One evening, while we were driving home from a session, something Sarah said triggered a memory of her deceit. "I don't think you can ever truly forgive me," she said quietly, and it was as if a dam broke in me. "Forgiveness doesn't come easily, Sarah. You shattered my trust. I'm still processing the betrayal," I admitted, my voice cracking. "I want to work through this, but it's going to take time. You can't just expect me to be okay overnight." She nodded, tears streaming down her face as she realized how deep the hurt ran. "I understand. I know I have to earn your trust back. Please give me a chance." I could see the sincerity in her eyes, and for the first time I felt a small flicker of hope. We continued our therapy session, slowly peeling back the layers of our relationship. Each week felt like a new battle, some days filled with progress, others riddled with setbacks. There were moments when I found myself closing off, retreating back into anger and hurt. It was hard to let go of the pain, especially when reminders of her betrayal were everywhere. One day I came home to find Sarah sitting on the couch with tears in her eyes. "I got a call from Jim," she said, her voice trembling. My heart dropped. "He said he misses me and wants to talk." Rage erupted within me, and I fought to stay calm. "Are you kidding me? I thought you were done with this." "No, no, I told him to never contact me again, I swear," she pleaded. I saw the sincerity in her eyes, and I realized this was a test, a moment that could either break us or propel us forward. "I need you to understand something," I said, my voice steady. "This is not just about you anymore. You can't keep going back to the past. It will destroy us." She nodded, and I could see her resolve strengthen. "You're right. I'll block him and never let him back into my life. I love you, and I want us to work." In that moment, I felt a flicker of hope again. Perhaps we could find our way back to each other. If she was willing to fight for it, then maybe I could, too. But the journey was far from over, and I knew I would have to keep my heart guarded as we navigated this complex path of healing. With every step forward, I realized we were both learning how to be vulnerable and honest, and the challenge of rebuilding trust was daunting. But if we wanted to truly move forward, we had to face the past together, even if that meant confronting painful truths. And in doing so, I discovered a new layer of strength within myself that I never knew existed. The fight was far from over, but I was ready for whatever came next. As Sarah and I continued our therapy sessions, I found myself grappling with a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. It was a delicate dance of hope and hurt, and each session left me feeling more introspective. We were making progress, but I often found myself wondering if it was enough, if the foundation we were trying to rebuild was strong enough to support the weight of our past. The weeks turned into months, and as spring blossomed, so did the tentative signals of healing between us. I noticed small changes in Sarah's behavior. She was more attentive, more willing to communicate openly and honestly. We had deep conversations that we hadn't had in years, and with each passing day, I started to see glimpses of the woman I fell in love with, the one who made me laugh and share my dreams. However, even as things began to improve, the specter of her betrayal loomed large. I could still feel the sharp edges of my anger, and I often worried that the scars would never truly heal. It wasn't just about her infidelity. It was about the betrayal of trust, the feeling of being blindsided by someone I thought I knew better than anyone. One evening, while we were cooking dinner together, I took a deep breath and decided to share my feelings. "Sarah," I began hesitantly, "I want you to know that I'm trying to trust you again, but it's hard. Every time I think about what you did, it feels like a punch to the gut." She paused, looking up from the chopping board. "I understand. I'm so sorry for what happened. I never wanted to hurt you, and I'll do anything to show you I'm committed to us." There was sincerity in her voice, and I saw the remorse reflected in her eyes, but I couldn't ignore the nagging doubts that still flickered in the back of my mind. "I just need time," I said quietly, stirring the pot on the stove. "It's going to take a lot of work for me to feel whole again." "I'm here to do that work," she replied, her tone earnest. "I know I messed up, but I'll fight for this. I want our family back together." And for a moment, it felt like we were on the right path. But just as I began to allow myself to feel hopeful, life threw another curveball at us. One afternoon, while I was at work, I received a call from Sarah that turned my world upside down. "Hey, can you come home? I need to talk to you." Her voice trembled, and I could hear the anxiety in her tone. "Is everything okay?" I asked, my heart racing. "No, just please come home." I rushed home, dread settling in my stomach. When I walked through the door, Sarah was sitting on the couch, her hands clasped tightly together. "What's wrong?" I asked, my voice laced with concern. "I got a message from Jim," she said, her voice breaking. "He said he wants to talk to me about something important." My heart raced, anger boiling beneath the surface. "Why would you even consider talking to him? We've been working on us." "I didn't want to, but he threatened me," she replied, tears streaming down her cheeks. "He said if I didn't meet him, he would tell you everything. He's been saying things that make it sound like he knows more than he should." "Like what?" I demanded, my pulse pounding in my ears. "That I still have feelings for him," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I do. I swear I'm with you. I love you. I'm scared, and I don't know what to do." I felt the world tilt beneath me. It was one thing to deal with her past transgressions, but this felt like a new level of betrayal, a puppet master pulling strings behind the scenes. "You can't let him control you, Sarah. You need to cut ties with him completely. We can't move forward if he's still lurking in the shadows." "I know, I just don't know how to make him stop," she cried, her anguish piercing through my anger. "I thought he would just go away, but he keeps reaching out. I thought blocking him would be enough, but now I'm terrified." I took a deep breath, trying to collect my thoughts. "We need to set boundaries. I can't have him in our lives. I can't keep doing this dance with you and him." "I'll do whatever it takes," she promised, her eyes wide with determination. "I'll tell him I'm done, and I'll block him again. Just please trust me." "I want to, but it's hard," I admitted, feeling the weight of it all pressing down on me. Over the next few days, we devised a plan to deal with Jim. Sarah agreed to confront him directly, to make it absolutely clear that there was nothing left between them. I stood with her as she sent that final message, the one that would sever any lingering ties. I was terrified of what that might unleash, but I knew it was necessary for our healing. When she finally blocked him, I felt a small glimmer of satisfaction. Maybe, just maybe, this was a turning point. But as days passed without incident, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. I hoped Jim would stay away, but the fear of him resurfacing haunted me, reminding me that our path to healing was still fraught with danger. One night, as we lay in bed together, I turned to Sarah and said, "I've been thinking, perhaps we should consider moving. A fresh start somewhere new could help us leave all this behind." Her eyes widened, a mix of surprise and hope flickering across her face. "You mean it? A new place could really help us." "Yeah, I think so. New city, new beginnings. We can focus on rebuilding our family without the reminders of this past hanging over us." She smiled, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of possibility. It wouldn't be easy, and the road ahead was still uncertain, but we were both willing to fight for our family. Whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, ready to reclaim our life and our love. As we settled into the idea of a fresh start, Sarah and I began to talk about what moving would mean for us. We spent nights dreaming about potential new homes and neighborhoods, discussing what it would be like to raise Ethan in a place where this chapter of our lives didn't linger like a ghost. It felt liberating, and for the first time in months, I began to feel lighter. We made plans to visit a few towns nearby, looking for places that felt welcoming and family-friendly. It was an exciting distraction from the heaviness that had defined our lives for so long. We even started to look at houses online, curating lists of places that resonated with us. Sarah was more engaged than I had seen her in a long time, and I could sense that we were both moving past the pain and toward a hopeful future. But just when things began to feel stable, I received a text late one night. It was from an unknown number, and my heart raced as I hesitated before opening it. "Hey, it's Jim. Can we talk? There's something you need to know." A wave of panic washed over me. I felt the ground shift beneath my feet once more. Was he coming back to stir up trouble? I took a moment to breathe, trying to keep my cool. I knew I needed to handle this carefully. I couldn't let fear dictate my next move. I showed the message to Sarah, and her face turned pale. "What does he want?" she whispered, fear creeping into her voice. "I don't know, but I'm not going to let him control us again." "I'll handle it," I said firmly, my heart pounding in my chest. I decided to respond, asking him what he wanted. I needed to understand the threat he posed, but I also wanted to confront him directly. He responded quickly, suggesting we meet in person. I felt torn. It was a risky move, but part of me felt that I needed to face this head-on to reclaim my narrative. The next day, I found myself sitting in a coffee shop, waiting for Jim. I felt a mix of anger, anxiety, and determination swirling within me. When he walked in, I couldn't help but notice how smug he looked, like he held all the cards. "Thanks for coming," he said, sliding into the seat across from me. "I didn't think you would." "Get to the point," I said, my voice steady but laced with tension. He smirked, leaning back in his chair. "I just wanted to make sure you knew the truth about Sarah. She's told you some lies to cover her tracks." "What lies?" I challenged, crossing my arms. He leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "She was never really over me. She's just playing house with you until she figures out her next move." I felt my blood boil, and I fought the urge to lash out. "You're lying," I shot back, trying to keep my composure. "She's committed to me and our family. You're just trying to hurt her." He shrugged, maintaining that infuriating smugness. "Just remember, people don't change. You don't really know her." I clenched my fists, but I could feel the anger boiling inside me. "I know enough. I know that she's working to fix what she broke. We're moving forward, and you're not welcome in our lives anymore." Jim raised an eyebrow, seemingly unfazed. "We'll see about that. I'll always be around, so don't get too comfortable." With that, I stood up, feeling a surge of power. I refused to let this man dictate my life anymore. I could sense Sarah's fear in her eyes when I got home, and I knew I had to reassure her. "I talked to him," I said, sitting down with her. "He's trying to manipulate us to get under our skin, but we can't let him." "What did he say?" she asked, anxiety etched on her face. "Just the same old threats, trying to spread doubt. But I won't let him control our lives anymore." She nodded, and as I looked into her eyes, I saw a spark of determination. "We are moving forward together. We'll build our life on trust and honesty, and I won't let him break us again." From that day on, we focused on our plans to move. We visited neighborhoods, looked at houses, and talked about the life we wanted to create together. I could feel that our bond was strengthening as we navigated the challenges. Eventually, we found a little house in a charming community, surrounded by parks and friendly neighbors. It felt like a fresh slate, a place where we could wipe the slate clean and start anew. As we unpacked boxes and set up our new home, I realized how far we had come. The journey hadn't been easy, and the scars of betrayal still lingered, but I felt a renewed sense of hope. I knew that healing wasn't linear. It would take time and effort. But as we sat together on our new couch, watching Ethan play in the backyard, I felt a warm glow of possibility. There were still tough conversations ahead, and I knew we couldn't become complacent. But together, we could face whatever challenges came our way. I learned that love sometimes means fighting through the darkness to find the light again. As our family settled into our new home, I reflected on the lessons learned. Trust is fragile, but it can be rebuilt through honesty, vulnerability, and commitment. I had learned to stand my ground, to demand respect, and to prioritize my own emotional well-being. In the end, I realized that sometimes the hardest battles lead to the strongest foundations. Moving forward, I felt a sense of peace knowing that we were crafting a new story, one where love reigned over betrayal, and where we could forge a future filled with hope and authenticity.